Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Path to 1 Million. My name is Cliff Duvenois. This is episode 19. I decided to call this one Death, Reborn, and the Big Why. So I've been working pretty steady on putting the finishing touches on my LinkedIn project. It's getting closer and closer to seeing the light of day. I'm super excited. I'm actually going to be shooting a bunch of videos today. Everything's moving forward. But it was interesting because as I was looking over the material this morning and what I've put together, the one thing that really I've been thinking a lot lately about my experiences in college, and what I went through back then is almost kind of similar to what I was going through now. And that is, when I was back in college, and I know that I've shared this story before, is, when I went into college, I had this big dream that I was going to be, an aerospace engineer. I wanted to actually buy a DeLorean. Yes, I do have a Back to the Future thing, but I wanted to have this DeLorean, right? And I had this vision of me moving to Seattle and just, hitting it big as an aerospace engineer, right? That was my goal. That was my dream. And I remember that when I got to college, of course, the first semester for me anyways, was almost like a repeat of high school, right? It was like high school condensed into one semester, knocked it out of the park. That was no big deal. I made it into my second semester of college. And it was at that point where I started getting into real trouble. Like my GPA went from like a 3.8 to like a 2.2 or something like that. It was really crazy. But when I got scared was when I hit my third semester in the middle of my second year, when I got my letter from the university saying that I was on academic probation. And if I didn't get my GPA up, I was going to be kicked out of school and everything else. And I know I talked about this before. And basically, I knew that I was going to have to change how I approached life in general. Because, in high school, I kind of really didn't care. But in college, I did care because college was going to set me up for success later on in life. And I wanted to make sure that I could do the best that I could in college. And, I know I talked about, some things about how I was really scared, and it was, telling my parents was absolutely the worst thing on the planet. Like, hey, your kid that you say is so smart is actually pretty stupid. Anyways, the one thing though that I haven't talked about, and I know this going forward, and this is just basically an experience, is that I knew that somehow or another, the old Cliff was going to have to be set aside, was going to have to die, so to speak, in order to make room for the new Cliff, the one that I envisioned coming down the road, the one that, had the success with the DeLorean car, and the big job with aerospace and, making Star Trek a reality. And I knew that, like I said, the old Cliff was going to have to essentially just die, just go away. New Cliff was going to have to come on board. And, a part of me was, I remember going through this transition and I was a little bit scared because, when you sit there and say to when you get into these patterns and you recognize these patterns, and I'm like, well, old Cliff would have done that. Old Cliff would have, went out and gotten drunk at a bar or whatever it is. But new Cliff doesn't do that because, new Cliff's got to study. And I remember having to set aside, all these notions. But at the same point in time, it was actually really exciting because I was actually crafting the person that I was going to be. So it's almost like I was getting rid of habits that didn't serve me anymore, thinking that didn't serve me anymore, be able to brush all that off to the side and bring in all these new and positive traits that were going to actually help me to, move forward in life and to get me those skills, help me build the network and whatever, but just help me to move forward. And of course, I really didn't know what I was doing or the direction I was going. So of course I picked up some bad habits that flew in there as well. And I was going to have to face those demons a little bit later on, another conversation for another time. But, it occurred to me that, as I'm building this LinkedIn project, one of my primary motivators behind it, of course, is to help people, especially people who are introverts. Because I know, for the longest time, I fight as an introvert, and I know I do these videos live and everything else like that. But I'm the guy, if there's a huge party going on, I'm more comfortable standing in the corner next to the potted plant than I'm out, being gregarious with people. So it's if I can help other introverts out there, other entrepreneurs that are out there that, are really trying to improve the quality of their life and, not only improve the quality of their life, but, the quality of their family's life or whatever it is, then I can do that, in a very safe fashion, kind of what I did to be able to elevate that conversation, because there's some really great people out there and there's some really phenomenal stories that I've heard from people, and some people got some definite plans on what they want to do for, their life and the future that they want to become. And so, and I recognize that what I'm doing is just a tool for them to be able to achieve that next step and be able to do it at scale and help them share their stories with other people and help them start that journey for themselves, moving forward. And I know that some people, I always get this note everything the other day, people are like, oh, you're going to make money off of this. But, really at the end of the day, I think Sir Richard Branson, he said it best when he was like, money is not a measure of success. It's just a byproduct of it. It really does boil down to the impact that you're having on other people, and being able to connect with other people and being able to share your story and be able to share with them what you can do to help them achieve what they want in life, whether it's wealth, health, or in the area of relationships, one of the two. So anyways, I just wanted to share with you, and I know that's a little philosophical today, but I just wanted to share with you a little bit more about, the grander scheme about, the LinkedIn and how in general, it can really help change people's lives if they know how to use the tool correctly, but more importantly, just making sure that they're coming from a place of contribution. Anyways, just wanted to share that with you. I hope your Sunday is going really well. Thank you for listening, and tomorrow will be episode number 20. I'll have more updates for you then. In the meantime, I hope you're having a fantastic day. I'll see you then.